The whole point of the gods was power. A power or ability to do many things. Religion in the world of the ancient Mediterranean, as in many places, centered on acts of devotion, offerings to particular gods, to keep the gods placated or happy, pleased with the humans, so that things would go well, disasters avoided. You wanted the gods on your side, and you especially wanted the most powerful of gods working in alignment with your interest. The empires of the Romans and the Persians both tended to religion with an eye toward the strength, security, health, and prosperity the divine could bring to their realms. Religion was important. It was important to have God, or the gods, on your side. That was the use of religion. And to that end, empires might encourage being religious. The Christian movement, as it grew in both these territories, developed a complicated relationship with the empires. Complication grew when Christians' ways of being religious threatened the overall piety or religion of empire. Christians would tell the stories of conflict. Christians whose devotion to the God they knew required a choice and a turning away from the gods of empire. The empire required some religious flexibility in the service of the essential goal. Christian stories often stressed their exemplary members' inflexibility for a different essential goal. They were not concerned as much with citizenship in the empire. They looked to another rule and a different ruler. The early Christian writings dramatized not only the martyr's heroism, they also put on vivid display the depravity of a social and political system operating with its own brutal and distorted religious logic. They dramatized the trauma and its legacy, a legacy of abuse that sowed seeds of corruption, confusing and dividing the wounded survivors. Where were God and the gods in all this? Where was this going? Was there a hope for the society of empire? A Christian vision for the political realm? Was this God of the Christians at war with the gods? At war with Rome? If so, where did that leave the Christians? Inevitably dominated by empire? God's party of righteous resistance? The suffering innocent? The poor and dying? The pure and uncorrupted? The few? Always on the margins of power? Or would God's power over empire finally be manifest? Rome either defeated or converted, the suffering Christians vindicated. Could the empire become God's empire? Would the brutality and corruption of former days give way to a new dawn of goodness? The glory of God shining through righteous magistrates, legislating divine law in a human sphere, a righteousness for all. The African bishop, preacher, writer, theologian Augustine entered into these questions from his vantage point in Numidia, in North Africa, early in the 5th century. By this time, Rome had officially largely turned away from the old gods and embraced the Christian church and the God Christians honored. And then, in the year 410, the unthinkable happened. With barbarians breaching the gates of Rome and wreaking havoc in its streets. Perhaps the God of the Christians was not the powerful protector of empire that the old faithful gods had been. Perhaps the glory and security of the past could only be secured with the renewal of the old religious practices. Christians, meanwhile, had been of two minds regarding empire, either embracing it as fully righteous when officially Christian, or rejecting it as the realm of corruption. Some placed themselves close to power. Others believed faithfulness demanded separation. The sacking of Rome in 410 gave Augustine a new perspective. Both of these Christian approaches were flawed. They imagined a simple binary: resignation to political defeat and withdrawal, or triumph and a theocratic reign of righteousness. Because they didn't reckon with the reality, the fallenness of human experience, the power of self-love, self-seeking, self-interest, and the effect of that fallenness on humans and their institutions. Empires were always corrupt, because corruption runs through a fallen human nature. The nominally Christian empire did not defy this fundamental reality of gravity. Christians were right when they said that God and God's prophets have taught a different way. And Christians are among those who belong to that other way, one that centers on a love of God, a love that enables a selfless care for others and for creation. While withdrawal from the corrupt ways of the world might be one option, it is not the only option, and perhaps not the best option. Because the world and its empires, with their loves, desires, ambitions, corrupted as they are, supply the place of human community. The flawed virtues of politics in nations and empires will never yield goodness and justice of a perfect sort. We should expect no Christ-like king, emperor, president. But Christians, those who seek a fuller wisdom, goodness, justice, can enter into the murky waters of politics, not to bring a perfection to politics, but to work in tandem with those whose motives are different, for truer forms of justice and care for the suffering.